Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I have a very special guest today, and one of the people I would say responsible for the build out that we've seen in the digital asset crypto space. My goodness, the founder of Shapeshift is on the line with me, Erik Voorhees. He's a returning guest and someone who's given us a lot of insight on Bitcoin, what's going on in digital assets, Ethereum, and again, the infrastructure of what is happening in this space. And, a guy like Elon Musk didn't just enter the crypto space in its early infancy. He wouldn't have. He needed it to be built out. It took a tremendous amount of proof of concept to get to where we are now. And of course, with the latest news, Elon is buying 1.5 billion in Bitcoin, which is absolutely incredible. And I'd love to thank Elon personally, but maybe indirectly and more meaningfully, I'd like to thank Erik, who's on the line with me right now, for what he's done in the space and everything he's done to bring it to where it is today. So Erik, thanks so much for coming on Crush the Street with me today.
Thanks for having me on. I certainly can't take credit for Elon's purchase, but I'll join you in thanking him for making a great decision.
My goodness. I mean, what a crazy ride it's been. I mean, I look back and what we saw in March, Bitcoin was $3,000. And I use that as the benchmark. I mean, for all the crypto digital assets, but you look at what we've seen, 10,000 to 3,000, and here we are, with it at around 44,000. It's what a crazy ride it's been on. And it's really not like a technical analysis thing, right? I mean, this is, a game changer announcement with someone like Elon Musk, the richest man on earth, tweeting about it and saying that he's making these massive purchases into the space. This is why it's again, beyond just charting and this is early stage growth.
Yeah, I would assume that SpaceX has bought some as well. SpaceX doesn't have to disclose it because they're not a public company. But yeah, it's a huge deal. I would happily predict that this year Tesla makes more money on its balance sheet Bitcoin asset than it does from any of its production of cars. Which isn't to demean the production of those cars, but is to simply say that this is a serious decision for them. It's a serious amount of money. And as Bitcoin gains this year, they're going to be looking very smart, several months from now.
Man, I'm feeling very indebted to Elon. I kind of want to go out and buy a Tesla.
My wife and I just bought one about a month ago. So I feel very happy with that purchase.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I've been looking at them. I see the new steering wheel and what's going on with them. It's pretty impressive technology. And now they're practical. They don't go 80 miles anymore. You can actually get somewhere and not have to charge it. So
yeah, they're incredible cars. So for all the hype that Elon himself has, the cars are amazing, and it's a company that it's so impressive when a non-incumbent moves into something, as rigid as like automobile production, goes totally against the mold, and through, a decade, just defeats every opponent and overcomes all the odds to build, what is now the most valuable car company in the world by market cap. And I think with the move into acquiring Bitcoin, this is just more demonstration that that's a company that looks toward the future and is willing to take bets on things that have not materialized yet, because they can see where the puck is going, to use the phrase. And hopefully this will help shift other businesses to be a little more forward thinking and to not just be all about like trying to maximize profits quarter to quarter, but thinking, over the coming years and decades, what are the areas in which they should be focusing their attention.
Yeah. Well, my goodness. And I'd love to do a deep dive study on Elon. He's such a person who really has no limits in his thinking. I was laughing. I was just talking to the guy at the Tesla dealer and just browsing. And he's like, yeah, these are the only colors we have. Well, who knows? Elon Musk might wake up tomorrow and say we're going to have a purple car or whatever, polka dots or whatever he wants. But that's such his personality. He doesn't box himself in with anything. He just thinks outside. And I mean, he's got a space company, he's got a car company, solar. I mean, he was part of PayPal. I mean, my goodness, he just whatever he wants to do, he does it, and it's a powerful thing when you think about it.
Yeah, I've never really had any heroes, in my life, and I think I have to say that Elon Musk is probably my first real fanboy hero, primarily just because he's clearly the greatest entrepreneur of our time. To have built two, huge companies that are groundbreaking in their own right, is just such an impressive feat. And not only are they successful companies, but they are doing really radical stuff. And there's a lot of companies out there that are successful, but they do things that are not they're not changing humanity in any interesting way. But the SpaceX and Tesla are absolutely groundbreaking. So yeah, it's vindicating to see him buying Bitcoin with Tesla. And I hope that others follow suit and realize that, and all good businesses should be comfortable with sound money. Like they are in the business of making money. They should ultimately understand money very well as profit-seeking entities. And if you understand money, you can't save money in a debasing currency. That's just it's going to become an outdated notion. And I think you're going to see a lot of companies realize that holding sound money on their balance sheet is not a risky move, but is a much wiser move than holding fiat.
Yeah, so powerful. And I think that's why a lot of us got into Bitcoin in the first place. Erik, I wanted to, prior to obviously this Elon Musk news and the crypto's just going crazy right now over the weekend and into this Monday. The big news was GameStop and the exposure to the Main Street blatant market manipulation that's been happening. Kind of want to get your thoughts on this. Someone who, obviously took a chance outside of the mainstream financial news, got into digital assets. And I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, just general thoughts. I mean, where did your mind go when you saw what was happening with the chaos and the shorts on GameStop and the short squeeze and, the brokerages shutting down accounts? I mean, all of this, what does this mean to you?
Yeah, well, what was amazing is how quickly it went from sort of a niche thing as part of the subreddit to, complete popular consciousness, like within 48 hours. And that was really fascinating to watch. I think what it demonstrated is both that markets change and are dynamic, and there is this whole new type of investor who acts a little differently than the old type of investor. And these are sort of self-organizing groups on the internet where they are, with no official leader, making decisions and kind of acting as a herd together. And you can kind of think of that as like a very different model to a traditional hedge fund, which is, very centralized and a clear, command structure. And I don't think one or the other is necessarily better, but just the point is that because of internet communication, people are finding increasing numbers of ways to self-organize. And this was a case where, they're called, normal retail investors. I'm guessing a lot of the Wall Street Bets folks are actually from Wall Street. They just, trade on these accounts in their spare time. But certainly a lot of them are, quote unquote, normal folk. And just that whole narrative of them short squeezing this hedge fund out of a short on GameStop was such a clear, like David and Goliath story. I mean, I think GameStop's absolutely a failing business, and it is appropriate to short it because that model's gone. I mean, it's like a blockbuster. So right. I don't think the rally that it's seen is because the company itself is valid, but it is just cool to see that self-organizing groups of retail investors can have material impacts on markets. I don't think that should be the exclusive territory of institutions on Wall Street.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. Well, interesting. And you know, I guess part of it is that, hey, this is the big money was manipulating the market downwards, and the retail people said, hey, we're gonna, you know, bring some price equilibrium to what's being overdone on the short side. And they capitalized on that. There was some sort of price discovery, if you will, for what needed to correct. And you know, many people feel like silver is another potential target for this. I know there was some talk about it on the Wall Street Bets, but this has been a narrative now going on for many, many years. GameStop just kind of happened overnight, and it got targeted, and boom, it all happened. But the silver shorts, I mean, this has been something that's been going around the sound money community for years and years now. So I don't know, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've heard of this sort of conspiracy theory of silver manipulation and gold manipulation for a long time. I don't have a strong opinion on it, but I am skeptical whenever someone says that a market is sort of perpetually manipulated in one direction. That generally is very difficult to happen. Like markets are manipulated all the time for short periods of time. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that. You know, manipulation is a bad word, but it often just means, you know, people are trying to make money by trading. And the line of where it becomes sinister manipulation is harder to define than one might think. But so I don't know if there's some like huge conspiracy to short silver, but if there is, the fact that it's going on for, you know, decades is a red flag to me. Like because that seems like a huge opportunity for other profit-seeking groups, other hedge funds, to totally annihilate that position themselves. So yeah, who knows? I think, you know, what will ultimately cause silver to change its dynamics is if the world moved toward more metals-based money again. But that doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon.
Right. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So what are your thoughts then as it ties into the cryptocurrencies? Do you feel like cryptos have been manipulated? You kind of, I think, alluded to that like all markets are manipulated to some degree. And a lot of people feel like cryptos are easy to manipulate, you know, because of their market cap, or, you know, what used to be their smaller market cap. Now it's starting to grow. But yeah, maybe you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah. So yeah, all markets are manipulated to varying degrees, and everyone who is participating in markets is basically trying to profit at the expense of the other people participating in the markets, at least in terms of a trading sense. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. What becomes wrong is when certain groups have sort of legal privileges that others don't, and then they're playing by a different set of rules. So the great example of this, of course, is the Federal Reserve, which can create money out of thin air, or banks generally, which can create money out of thin air. That's a degree of manipulation that is clearly crossing an ethical line. But yeah, I mean, are crypto markets more manipulated than others? I don't know. I think because they are built on open source public blockchains, they will end up more honest and transparent than many other markets. That can take time to develop, but I think they sit on a foundation that is a lot more legitimate. And so people should be able to trust that with time.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about what is causing the growth of Bitcoin and crypto and the digital assets. I'm just curious, you know, obviously we have just this headline news now with Bitcoin moving into the space, but, you know, many people criticize the digital assets for bottoming out when the markets were crashing and then rising with a record-breaking stock market. So is there a bit of a correlation between digital assets and mainstream stocks, which sort of goes against the narrative of why people got into crypto in the first place?
Yeah, fair question. It depends what time frame you're looking at. So, certainly since March, there is clearly a fairly strong correlation between crypto and equities. At other times in history, it's been stronger and or weaker. So to say that there is a correlation does not mean that there will be the same correlation tomorrow. And I think that's a trap that people can fall into. Fundamentally, why is crypto rising? Why is Bitcoin rising? It's because it is becoming the foundation of the financial system of tomorrow. And this is a multi-decade phenomenon where all of finance is going to be and is being reconstructed on blockchains and away from fiat and banks. That's the fundamental reason why these assets are rising. And day to day, whether they go up or down, is often just due to random trading of millions of different participants. And that's not really the interesting point. The important point is the general arc of growth. And that's a fundamental story of how human economies and human finance is changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I used to say, and it seemed like a high pie in the sky prediction at times, but used to say Bitcoin, I think, is going to 50,000. And Ethereum is, at least going to go to its all-time highs. I mean, again, this was back when Ethereum was $100, $200, $300. That's kind of, and then, but here we are. It's kind of like, it's boring now. Like boring to even say those predictions anymore. And like it seems like there's just a lot more room for it to grow, considering what we're seeing. So maybe some thoughts on that. I mean, maybe not. You don't have to give any sort of definite price targets, but in general, what are your thoughts on valuations and kind of how long they can run here?
Yeah, both Bitcoin and Ethereum are not nearly in a frothy state. They are both at their all-time highs at this point. I expect them to continue hitting all-time highs for months, not in a straight line, but with pretty significant pullbacks along the way. But it's definitely a bull cycle, and I've been through several of these. And everyone scratches their head when it's rising, and then they get on board with it, and then it's falling, and then they scratch their head when it's falling. And ultimately, you just have to zoom out and realize that these are ascending assets that are becoming critical pieces of infrastructure. Bitcoin is becoming the base money of the world, and it's in the first inning of that game. That's why these things are going to rise over time. And absolutely, they will get into another speculative bubble again, perhaps this year, perhaps early next year. And they will go, well beyond their short-term reasonable prices, quote unquote. And there will be a huge crash and pullback in a bear market again for a year or two or three. And people should just, expect that, and that's fine. Ultimately, these things are growing, as the best investments in the world. And if you're going to own them, you need to have a investment horizon of, at least 5 years. So if you're buying them on any day and expecting to sell them in a month to make some profit, that's a really dangerous game, and all you're doing is trading and gambling. If you actually want to be part of the wealth being created with these systems, then acquire it and own it for 5 years at least.
Yeah. Yeah, arithmetically, I mean, it was great to be getting into Bitcoin much earlier. Ethereum, buying at $200, $300, $150. Those were times when the markets were shaky. They didn't have that bull market behind you, and it really, you had to dig your heels in and say, all right, I'm in it to win it. It could go from 150 to 100, and you down 50%. And it took that guts. But really, I would say when Bitcoin was crossing just in this last December, 20,000 again, hitting its all-time high, Ethereum was like $500, $600. And to me, that was like, okay, we got a lot of confirmation that Ethereum has some catching up to do, as opposed to, again, having to get in when it was 200, 300 and not knowing what the markets are doing. We were in a real bull market in Bitcoin, and you just could tell like Ethereum needs to catch up. So having said that, with Ethereum at 1,700, what are your thoughts with maybe Ethereum and it moving in relation to Bitcoin?
Yeah, in both the bull market and in the bear market, most of the crypto assets move very much in the same way. They're all highly correlated with each other. And over shorter time frames, the quality and prospects of the asset is less important than the general market trend. That said, over the long period, the quality and attributes of the asset matter more than anything. So Bitcoin and Ethereum, are clearly two crypto projects that have proven themselves and which are worth a lot of money, right? What the right price is on any given day or month, no one knows. But they have established themselves. They've overcome huge obstacles. They're both good in different ways. Ethereum has attributes that Bitcoin doesn't, and vice versa. And this gives some pros and cons to each. Bitcoin is a better form of money than Ethereum. Ethereum is a better decentralized platform for applications than Bitcoin. Both of those are true. And so, I think it's very reasonable to own considerable amounts of both. Ethereum is more speculative still. It's younger, it's more risky. Bitcoin is the more conservative of the two. So it's important for people to understand that as well.
Okay. Well, Erik, if people want to learn more about you, the work you do, please let them know where they can go and what they can expect to find. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. I really appreciate your time. I don't take it lightly. And again, just thank you. Thank you for what you've done, because I really do attribute a lot of this growth to guys like you who've planted seeds for real infrastructure. Because now it's got legs. Now there's momentum. I mean, it's a whole new world. And again, I feel like you were a large part of that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Much of what's cool about this stuff is that there are thousands and thousands of people all over the world who care deeply about it and have been working on these projects for many years. So it's cool to be part of that. For those who want to follow me, probably best place is Twitter at Erik Voorhees. And I run Shapeshift, so feel free to follow Shapeshift on Twitter and download our app if you're interested in self-custody of your own crypto in an easy way. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks, Erik. Appreciate your time.
All right. See ya.